is the Rangers Journal now.
Well, welcome everyone to the Rangers Journal. We're here for a little bit of a special edition this evening as we're going to look back on the last year of Phillipe Clement. Yep, it's been a year. I can't believe it as well. I'm joined tonight by two greats of the Rangers Journal. That's Cammy. How are you, mate?
I'm good. I just can't actually believe that's a year, and there's so much has happened across that. But I'm looking forward to a good discussion on it.
And Scotty, mate, welcome aboard.
Hi, cheers, pal. Cheers for having me on. It's very good to come on and speak about the Rangers.
It is, and this is. I like it when we've got a specific thing, in mind to talk about. I was not aware of Phillipe Clement. I hadn't heard of him before. I hadn't heard of him as a player. Although he has scored one international goal for his country, and I had seen that in a reel before, but I had made no connection to him coming to our club. There was always a bit of noise at the time, Scotty. I'll come to you first. Obviously, we lose Beale after the Aberdeen game, thankfully, in my opinion, and the hunt is there for a top-level manager. We don't want a project manager anymore. We kind of need somebody who's going to take the reins and wear the weight of the Rangers manager on his shoulder and wear it well. So we were left with a few options, but it kind of whittled down to three, wasn't it? It was kind of Frank Lampard, Phillipe Clement, and I always do that. It's Kevin Muscat. Right. What was your opinion before he signed? Did you know much about him like me? Did you do a lot of research?
I didn't know much about him, Billy, no. I probably know more about him now than what I ever have because we've done that wee kind of deep dive series into about his time at Genk, his time at Bruges, and his time at Monaco. That's told me an awful lot about the man in terms of he's willing to make big decisions. I think we've seen that with Connor Goldson. Initially, I need to be honest, I was probably wanting Kevin Muscat in because I was looking at it from a kind of brand and identity point of view where I wanted somebody to come in, got Rangers out, which Clement is doing, got Rangers out and start again and give us something that we can get excited about on the park that we can build on for years to come. Obviously, the board chose a different direction. They went with a proven winner. You can't really... I don't think anybody will have any complaints with that. In Belgium, he's a complete, not a legend. He's won 3 different titles with 2 different teams. And it's not easy to win a league over there either, Billy, especially not 2-3 years in a row. He's the first manager. I think it was since Michel Prudhomme. I think he was the last one to do it since before Clement. He was the first manager to do it because they've got that crazy... We think our split's bad.
Yeah,
they've got theirs. Like, I think when their split happens, they half everybody's points and then they play each other twice. Something crazy like that. And Clement's managed to win. He's took 2 clubs that weren't in a good position and he's took them to a good place. So I'm very much trusting the process.
And Cammy, I'll come to you on just the kind of before he signed. What was your kind of thoughts on the other candidates, especially, and also him? Have you heard of him before that?
As one of the elder statesmen of the Rangers Journal, I had heard of him from his football career. I think he played down south with Coventry. It was one of those I knew the name, knew the face, but didn't know a great deal more than that. For me, out of the 3 candidates, the one I didn't want was Frank Lampard. Fantastic player, all that sort of stuff, but that's another conversation. It was very much 2 different sort of styles. Somebody that's a wee bit more experienced and a winner, as Scotty said about Phillipe Clement in Belgium, and Muscat, the attacking football. I think the link with Postecoglou, etc. I was neither here nor there. I was just pleased that we were actually going through what appeared to be a proper recruitment and a proper interview, and I think Graham Souness was involved in the interviews and that sort of thing. So I think after taking the very lazy option that we took after Gio left, I was pleased that we were at least going about it in the right fashion.
Scotty, we wouldn't be doing this podcast, I don't think. I don't think we're going to do a yearly review of every single manager that we get on board, but there's obviously still some debate on whether he has been the right man for the job. He's had a great start, some might say, and then it kind of fell off, and he's maybe recovered a bit this season. But what's your thoughts at the moment? We're going to review the year, obviously, that he's been there, but your thoughts on him at the moment? Are you convinced that he is the man to take us forward long term?
I think it's fair to say the first 6 months he came in and blew us all out of the water just quickly, because that's leading on to my point. Your question is the doubts have been created now, I would say, because of the unconvincing performance in the Champions League against Kiev, not being able to beat Celtic, several different but there's mitigating circumstances for stuff like that in terms of Kiev playing at Hampden, for example. He's got credit in the bank. He won a League Cup. He got us back into a league race that we never thought we would get into. That's the squad done what they normally do. Failed us. This season, there is questions over him, but due to everything that's happened in the summer, I think we just need to stick with somebody. Sacking manager after manager isn't going to help, but he's not helping himself either with tactics in Old Firm games. We're far too open. That's where my concern comes in, and I think the next Old Firm game is probably his most important one so far, because I'll be looking for us to at least stop conceding first. You know, it's a lesson that we've not learned in these matches, and it's a lesson that he should have learned by now in terms of his tactics. Celtic are going to come out and try and sucker punch early, and it's happened time and time and time again. So we'll just need to wait and see, Billy, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going in the right direction. Not saying we're going to get there this season, but I think over time we will if we stick with the guy.
Cammy, I don't know if you've had the chance to view all of the Scott's interviews with the previous clubs that Clement's been at, but one thing that I think was the Monaco guy brought up, forgive me if I'm wrong, Scotty, but it was about being too open at the back and playing through the middle. And it's almost like we'll just score one more goal than you and not worry about the defence. Do you see that at the moment? Because I think that's what I'm seeing.
It's an issue that I've had since the wheels came off in March time. You know, I've been quite consistent, and I've repeated it almost as much as I said we needed to sign a number 6. That we leave ourselves the fixation with a system and the fixation with a number 10, and the lack of flexibility to adapt to certain teams and different opposition. It's very much that's my main frustration with Phillipe Clement. I think there's huge parallels with Man United. I think there's parallels with the approach of Ten Hag. I think they are both very, this is the way I want to play, and that's it sort of situation. So I think that's the concern. Listen, I want him to succeed. Doesn't matter who the Rangers manager is. I want them to succeed. I want the Rangers team to be winning. That's all we want. That's all anybody wants. But I think that the sort of red flags that had been raised prior to his appointment, very similar to when Feyenoord fans spoke about Giovanni van Bronckhorst. Sometimes the red flags, see when you're not involved in the recruitment process, you just go, well, you're trusting the people that are making the decisions to take all these things into consideration. But it is a concern that you're in 2 years on from Gio leaving. Similar sort of comments that were made at the time of his appointment are sort of coming to roost with regard to Phillipe Clement.
Scotty, some of the red flags that Cammy mentions there was mentioned a few times in your interviews over the last week or so. And what kind of worried me when he first signed was we were told he played with wingers, which I like that style of football. I'm not going to lie about that. But Michael Beale didn't build a team that had many wingers in it. So that was my worry, that we're changing manager to someone who plays radically differently. That's fine, but we just don't have the money to go out and spend on And I think it's been demonstrated the last 2 transfer windows. So we'll go over the signings that he's made, but we don't really have the team that suited the manager, and yet he got a good tune out of them, especially at the beginning.
Aye, definitely. One thing that came up for the interviews was that he likes his wingers to get forward, get to the byline and get a cutback.
Yeah.
I've yet to see that.
Yeah.
But also what I've taken for the interviews is he's able to adapt to what he's got in front of him. And I think when we seen him come in, he done that. He put a system in place. He stripped back the complicated instructions the players had, made it simple for them, started winning football matches. It literally was as easy as that. Then you get to this season and you're looking for him to go out and put more of his own stamp on things. And we're still playing the 4-2-3-1. I think it was a 4-3-3 at Genk at first. It was a 4-2-3-1 at Bruges. And I think it was a 4-3-3 at Monaco, if I remember rightly. So he can do it, but I think once he set his mind to something, it's trying to get him to change that. But it's usually what's within the club is what he'll base his kind of philosophy, identity, however you want to call it. I think the injuries, as Nicholas just says in the comments there, I don't think the injuries have helped. Oscar Cortez, as we come in, we've seen Cortez come in against Hearts and scored that fantastic goal, set up a couple of goals. It just looked like a stick of dynamite with a Rangers jersey on. It looked absolutely amazing. Not seen him. I don't think Clement is anywhere near where he wants us to be in terms of the players he wants in the door. It's going to take another 2, possibly 3 transfer windows to get at. If he's still in a job, he could be sitting here this time next year in a far better position and looking at where Celtic are now in terms of all they had to do in the summer was come in and sign a couple of players that they were just tweaking a successful team. Maybe we'll be in that position this time next season, you know what I mean? So we are in a rebuilding process. So to me, we just need to be patient with Billy.
Cammy, what was your thought on that?
It's just injuries have been a factor, but again, the periods when the wheels came off, the stubbornness to persist with the same approach when you didn't have the personnel available, that I don't think helped the situation. Dujon Sterling playing on the right wing, that sort of situation, I mean, honest big guy, all that sort of stuff. I think when you're limited in the type of players that you've got to play your preferred way, I'm going to say it. Plan B is to do Plan A better. I think that you just have to have an open mind to be more adaptable. And I think at that point, we were just like, right, this is the way I'm going to play, and Kieran Dowell, you're going to play on the right side of the attack, or Dujon, you're going to play on the right side. It was just very much, it felt like throwing stuff at a wall approach in the last few weeks of the season. Injuries thus far this season haven't been quite as bad, but I think the injuries allied to his stubbornness in the way that he wants to play, I don't think. I think he was as culpable as the players who bottled it in that last period.
So we'll look at a couple of signings, his first few signings, because you mentioned that Hearts game. I think it's the one you're talking about, Scotty, just in February, was it? I think that's the best we played under him, certainly in the league. That was the best game that comes to mind for the style of play. But we signed Fabio Silva for Wolves on loan. We get Diomande with we have not option to buy, condition to buy, and Oscar Cortez on loan. What was your thoughts? Did you think that plugged the holes? There was a comment there about he maybe thought he only needed 3 or 4 signings, but he only got 3. Do you think they were the ones he was really wanting?
Fabio Silva would say, I think anybody in whoever is at Rangers at that time, if they get Fabio Silva put in front of them, they're going to take him. Was very much a failed signing though. In bringing Fabio Silva in, he initially starts off as a number 9 and not buying an out-and-out number 9 at that time. Not going to say it cost us the league, but it contributed to costing us the league in my opinion because of the chances that were missed in the running. Diamande at £4 million. I want to say he's worth it. I think he will be worth it in time. But Diamande's creating a wee bit of an enigma around about himself in my eyes, Billy, because is it we don't suit him? Does he not suit us? I don't think there's any doubt in his ability. I mean, he comes out in his first 2 games, scores 2 great goals, and then I've not really seen him produce anything great since. I thought he gave a really good performance in the Scottish Cup final. Oscar Cortez, like I said, come in, first 5 matches, it looks absolutely, just looked like a stick of dynamite. It looked brilliant. And I think in the summer, going out and doing that deal was probably the most sensible one to do. Seemed would have been too much money. Silva wasn't good enough, so Cortez was the one. Get him over the injury, get him on the park. We've not quite managed to do that yet, so that the jury's out for me on that signing and the Diamande signing, unfortunately. I think they will come good. There's clearly ability there, but it still needs a wee bit of fine tweaking. I think Diamande's missing a number 6. Cammy's going to love me for saying that, because the balance in midfield is completely wrong just now, and I think that's where we're going wrong in all fun matches, as well as not having that Stephen Davis, that experienced head. But I do also think we were right to let John Lundstrom go, because John Lundstrom wasn't the right man for that role either.
Cammy, I will let you come in on it, but I'm going to agree with Scotty on the 6 as well, because sometimes you find Barron has 2 or 3 players to deal with, and Diamande's too far away from him. He needs, in my opinion, an experienced number 6. I think I'd listened to another podcast to mention even getting one on loan to get us through in January would be the best option, and maybe try and buy a better value for money signing in next summer. But that's a position we really need to fill, I think, and I think you think that as well. I'll let you come in on that, but also not signing a dedicated number 9 when we just only had Cyril Dessers, and the injuries you mentioned earlier on contributed greatly to the decline in the second half of the season.
I mean, Fabio Silva, when I was giving my examples there of players that were getting put right and left, and I've consigned Fabio Silva to my the bin. I totally forgot about him, to be perfectly honest with you. You know, one of these, from what I can gather, signings that cost us a lot of money on a loan fee and wages and that sort of situation. But the signings in January were changing the model. I think we've heard all the sound bites about changing the strategy and buying young to sell on and all that sort of stuff. So I think Diamande, for me, the first couple of games, he battered in a couple for the edge of the box, and you're thinking, this is what we've been crying out for, a player for the middle of the park that's going to. But I think he looks very frustrated to me on a lot of occasions. He's one of these players that his body language always, even for somebody so young, I think he's very unhappy when he doesn't get the ball or he makes himself available into certain positions. But I just think that him and Connor Barron both show potential, but they just sometimes need that Stephen Davis, Barry Ferguson type that could actually just hold them into positions, and so that the gaps weren't there. Sometimes, although the manager can have I'm not saying you go against the manager's instructions, but when you're on the park, you can. You hear Roy Keane talking about it with Man United at times. You're up against it, you just drop in. You know, you're the number 10, you drop in, fill the gaps and that sort of thing. And I just think just having somebody that can pull a player into a position, not necessarily like a leader in the middle of the park. You know, we talk about leaders all over the pitch, but if you've got a player in the middle of the park that can do that, I think it would help the Raskin as well. I think it would greatly help him as well. He's a young player that's had a difficult time. Cortez, it's just been, you know, one thing after another, and I understand why we brought him back on loan. I do question why there's an obligation to buy, and I think we have spoke about that offline. I hope that there's some form of clause that we don't have to pay £4.5 million if we have a season of. But that's that's another issue. The recruitment in itself was fine. I'm sure there was another player that was mentioned, Ollie January, a striker that was scoring a lot of goals in Scotland at that point. That I can't remember his name. Played at Hearts, I think he played for, and he was scoring a lot of goals, and there was a lot of noise around him. But obviously that transfer never really happened. Do you like that, Scotty? I managed to waffle for it.
Was that boy Sims?
I can't. I'm trying not to mention that name, to be honest. But I think, regardless of who it was, I think we left ourselves very light and very reliant, and I think that was something that should have. I think we probably tried. I think there was, but it's clubs know you're desperate, so it probably makes deals harder. And I think the player concerned, I think the club that was selling were looking for top dollar, and but that's for the anniversary pod when we talk about not signing that player.
I think Neil Scoppin said in his interview that over the last couple of days that nobody wants to buy 28-year-olds, so 28, 29-year-olds. So I don't know if that's the market they're going to be looking at anyway. Let's turn to a question from Andrew at the Ibrox Channel podcast. So Clement has a win ratio of 54.4 across his managerial career. I bet Doug told you that. This season at Rangers, he's on 61.54. So what percentage do you see him finishing on this season, Scotty? I've got a caveat by saying that this is Scotland, though. You're expected to win most of your games, but what do you see him finishing on?
We're expected to win most of our games, but are we going to this season?
Yes.
No, I don't fancy our chances going away to Kilmarnock and away to Aberdeen the next couple of weeks. I'm just being honest, I don't. I think it's crunch time when we're coming up. So I'm going to say probably 65 to 70% on that question. I want to be more positive about it, but just seeing where we are and what we need, I don't really deal in percentages. I deal in an eye test. I've always done that. I'm not good with knowing how many games constitutes X, Y, and Z when it comes to numbers, but I'd probably say 65 to 70%. As long as we get, as long as we compete at the end of the day, I'll be a happy camper, Billy.
It'd be interesting if anybody could find out what you generally need as a win ratio to win the SPFL, to see how far off that 64% is to winning it. Yourself, Cammy, what's your thoughts on the percentage?
I haven't got a clue, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's I'll see where we are at the end of October, and then take it from there. I broke this season down into chunks between international breaks. I think I said in the chat a couple of days ago, we've got 4 league games between now and the next international break. You're looking for 12 points, and that includes trips to Kilmarnock and Aberdeen. I think that'll be telling. I think we'll know a lot more about the manager and this group of players by the time we hit the next international break. But I think probably agree 65 to 70. But I think in the league, I don't think there's going to be a lot of points dropped across the city. So I think to remain in touch, I think you're going to have to be pretty, you're going to have to win until you play them. And the overriding thing with regard to this season is winning big games. The monkey on his back is beating them. The likelihood is between now and the tea time on the 2nd of January, we're going to play them twice. You're making the assumption that we get to the League Cup final. You're making the assumption that they get to the final, and then you play them at Ibrox. The mood can change very, very quickly. It can go one way or the other. You get to the cup final and you beat them, and then 2 weeks later, 50,000 at Ibrox, places bouncing. Everybody's you're maybe within 6 or 7 points in the league. You then beat them on the 2nd of January. And the whole situation can flip and be a bit more positive. But the 2nd of January feels a lifetime away at this precise moment. There's so much football to play between now and then, but I think winning these big games that are coming up, the away games that are coming up, I think will instill a bit of belief and a bit of confidence, because I think there's a lot of almost acceptance, even amongst the more positive, amongst the Rangers support. There's an acceptance, but the only way to change that is by disproving what that belief is. And if you do that, get to a cup final, beat them in the cup final, beat them on the 2nd of January, who knows what can happen? Strengthen, bring in that experienced head, number 6 in January. Who knows? I'm maybe being a bit glass half full, but I think that's how my mentality is, that I would rather try to focus on that as being a potential outcome over the next wee while than think, woe is me, we're going to end up with nothing this season.
Scotty, we went through a similar period when Clement took over of difficult games, and he managed to get the team together, go on a run. We beat Ross County, I think, to go joint top of the league on goal difference, and I can't remember the game where we eventually go, but I know we podded all through that time. That was kind of a start, I guess, to this kind of Rangers journey, and it just seemed like the wheels came totally off after the Motherwell game. I think we got a penalty back in that game, but we didn't deserve really anything from it. The Motherwell came to Ibrox and played better than us, and that seemed to affect the team right through the spine of the team. We end up pulling a result out the bag against Celtic in the closing minutes, getting a draw, but it's still not a win for Clement. But it felt like it at the time, but it wasn't. And then we were up at Dundee. That there was nothing in that game that made me think the team was going to go on and win the league. And after it, we were in the room when the manager saying, "Oh, he still believes," but we knew there was 3 or 4 players in that team that were going to lose the league for us that season. The only kind of bright spark is we lose the cup final on a mistake from Jack Butland, and also I feel a mistake from the refereeing team, who disallowed a goal I felt was fine and would have maybe spurred us on. We were on the ascendance at the time, so there's so many fine margins in last season, and I know I'm rattled on a wee bit here, but sum up the kind of fine the end of the season and then we'll move on to the summer signings.
For me, it's about, I don't know, see these fine margins and all that kind of stuff, refereeing decisions. You're either good enough or you're not. It's the way I've always kind of adopted my view on football. Charles, thank you for your donation, mate. It's the way I've always kind of adopted my views on football. You're either good enough to beat Celtic or you're not. One thing I wanted to ask Cammy, if that's all right, before I answer the rest of your point, Billy, was, Cammy, see, do you have doubts as Clement as manager, and see if you had seen some progress against Celtic in terms of a performance on the pitch? I think it's fair to say, we've had the cup final. Do you think if you'd seen a narrower scoreline or a defence, a bit more stability back and stuff like that at Parkhead, would you be feeling a wee bit better that we're in safer hands?
I think so. I don't think I'm alone in that regard. I think when you play them, say, 5 or 6 times across the period since he came in, and the bar the cup final, which was a pretty dross game of football, to be honest with you, it doesn't appear that lessons had been learned. And I think against them, if you're going to be second place, I think you have to go toe to toe with them. That was why Steven Gerrard got so long, because Gerrard very quickly beat them and Gerrard had their measure across the period that he was Rangers manager. So I think that's I think somebody said that I was dreaming and look one game at a time and all that sort of stuff, and I get that, and I am very much only looking as far as Kilmarnock. But what I'm trying to say how it can change, irrespective of what's going on off the pitch, of which there's many issues that need to be fixed. But I think the failure to beat or be really, really competitive against them is something that a lot of people can't see past, and I do think that that's a stick that he unfortunately, until that changes, that's going to continue to be there.
Cool. I was just wondering, mate.
You need to remember my question now, mate.
Aye, it was with basically a team falling on its backside, Dundee and stuff like that. I think that's all down to leadership, to be honest with you, Billy. On the park, no off it. I think Clement had done as much as they could. They had won a team a cup, and when we win that League Cup, everybody tends to think, right, we're finally turning a corner. We're maybe going to get something out of a squad of players. Maybe they have the engine and the mentality and the legs to go and win this title and get it over the line because it's there for the taking. Then they go and get beat off Celtic at Parkhead, get beat off Motherwell, draw at Dundee, and it's done. I mean, it's as easy as that. Whereas I look at some of the leadership in the squad now, we've still got Tav, right, fine, granted. But if you look at Connor Barron, right, he makes that mistake against Leon, where he passes the ball, Lacazette sticks it in the top corner. I think it was that goal. Connor Barron immediately runs back, lifts the ball out of the net and takes it back to the centre circle. He's not going to sit and mope about and let it get in his head. He goes and he wants to try and fix it right away. Let's see if we've got that in the team. I think we're going to be all right. If we've got that energy and that drive about us, I think we could be okay. Charles, thank you again for your donation, mate.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Cammy, let's talk. The summer, all the talk was we needed a rebuild, and we lost a lot of experienced players, not necessarily players that were contributing, but they were certainly the kind of power structure in the dressing room. And so they needed replaced. And I'll just go through, you don't have to memorise them all, but pick out any that spring to mind. So Václav Černý, Oscar Cortes comes back to us on loan with an obligation to buy. Casemiro, Clinton Enciala, Liam Kelly as a backup goalkeeper, Connor Barron, who we've mentioned, Jefty, who we were meant to get last winter but finally arrives, Robin Proper, Hamza Igaman, Bayrami, and Mohamed Diamande signs as we're obligated to buy him. So was that the rebuild you were hoping for, or just what you maybe expected, knowing it's maybe going to be a 2 or 3, 4 window operation to do a full rebuild?
I think I was quite consistent. I thought we left us still 2 or 3 light. I think the issue was that Diamande and Cortes weren't seen as signings, if that makes sense, because they had already been there. So, you're up against it with regard to that. I still think the positions that needed upgraded at the start of the window still remains as an issue at the end of the window. Number 6 and another number 9. I think we're glaring. It was the longest transfer window in the history of the world. I've never been so glad to see that they're talking about shortening it from next season, which is you can't make it short enough for me. But I thought we were still 2 or 3. I thought we were still 2 or 3 light, whilst being accepting of it doesn't get fixed in one summer. But by getting the right 3 or 4 signings in that can affect your starting 11, then you don't necessarily fix it all in one summer. But with the right 3 or 4, you can move quicker, if that makes sense. It's so, but the whole profile's changed. The age of the squads. I mean, the age of the squad has massively reduced. The wage bill's massively reduced, etc., etc. But to get back to I thought a couple of players light.
And Scotty, I didn't ask you that question deliberately because I wanted to talk about, again, stuff that came up in your interviews with a few of the guys. They mentioned that Clement likes big, physical, athletic type players. I don't know if there's that many you could call that, describe them that from the signings that we got in the summer. So are we not getting our first and second targets and just going for who was available? Or do you think these signings were with a plan in mind?
Oh, see if you rewind a wee bit. He had big, physical, athletic players in his team. I mean, beginning the last season, Tav says he's in the Landay Giants, right? But these players didn't have the application or the work rate or the desire or the mentality to play for Rangers, i.e. Sam Lammers. And Cyril Dessers, even now when you punt a ball up the park, he's like Bambi on ice. He doesn't know what he's doing with a ball here. Igaman's about 2 foot smaller and better than him in here. Tells you everything you want to know. One thing it did stick out, just veering for your question, one thing it did stick out was in the Monaco interview, Damien says to me that Alexander Golovin, the Russian player, he had injury issues and Clement came in and sorted him and made him more combust. That was down to Clement. That player can now play 2 games a week, etc., etc. He's playing every week and every minute for Monaco. So that was interesting in the physical aspect. I don't really know. I think if we get one Jordan in the summer, I think that would have been a bit of a game changer, because that's that big, tall, physical player in the middle of the park that you want with the sensible head. He's got all the experience. And whether we've heard for Nils Koppin interview via Rangers Review is that he's wanting to bring the age of the squad down, etc., etc. It's about getting the right Robin proper. It's about bringing the right experience in and mixing it all together. So, be interesting to see. I think Seema would have really did fit Clement's kind of profile of signing in terms of big, tall, physical, etc. Obviously, we didn't get him for various reasons, but be interesting to see what we do bring in. Do we need more physicality? Maybe.
I think so.
It's really difficult, to be honest with you, Billy, but it's where you're going to place it on a pitch and is it a right fit? You know what I mean? One thing I will say about our transfer business is we're a hell of a lot better at buying players now than what we were this time last season.
Fair dues. And Cammy, that point about physicality over maybe skill to a degree, we're not going to get skillful, physical, big guys because they get taken by the big teams, don't they? So we need to maybe kind of blend that, I suppose. But I was surprised at how, Connor Barnes, I don't mean he's not physical, whatever, but he's not huge, he's not commanding. And not many of those players. I mean, Igaman has shown he can be, even though he's not, not the tallest. But what was your thought of the kind of blend of the squad that we now have?
I think one of the comments, I can't remember who it was, he spoke about we need more legs. And I think that's those sort of players, if you can get a player that's physical and got great energy and can get about the pitch and all over the park, then great. But I think that more pace. I think pace is a thing I don't think we have across the team. Physicality, bar 2 or 3 players, is something that we're lacking. But for me, I just think that we need more mobility and more energy and more sort of dynamism to just appear that you can move box to box more freely, So I don't envy Nils Koppin and the scouts with regard to what they've got to work with, the budgets that they've got to work with, but he is very, very interesting, and it's interesting that there is a clear plan with regard to the sort of what he is looking for. But I think just more pace across the side is the one thing that I think we are still sadly lacking.
One thing that's been an issue, Scotty, for a number of seasons has been the injuries, and I know you've mentioned that in some of those interviews that I'm going to go back a bit from this actually, because he said when he came in that players weren't using the facilities that were available to them to recover from injuries faster. I think the cryo chamber was the one I remember, and obviously he's implemented this. He's made a little bit of a rod for his own back, and it's been okay so far, I guess. Raskin got injured, Cortes unfortunately been injured, but it's not been the same kind of, everybody's in the recovery room, treatment room. But do you feel he's improved the fitness from last season and also the injury record? You think he's having a big input in that?
I think he's having a big input. I think we'll see as the season goes on how fit the players really are. what I will say is at the start of the season, they didn't look that fit. The amount of times I've seen Tom Lawrence getting ready to keel over, like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Managed to get him on a bit of form, and he gets injured against Leon. God knows when he'll be back. But I think the medical department's improved. I think that and the signing aspect is definitely, the standards have went back up, which is good, which is what you're looking for. We're coming into, after this next international break, you're really coming into the kind of busy, hectic sort of period of the season where you're going to see how fit your team are. So we'll just need to wait and see. But I mean, they do look fit enough. We've not really suffered any dropped points after playing in Europe so far, which isn't too bad. But like I say, the crunch time's yet to come, Billy.
Well, let's kind of turn this into a ones to watch show, Cammy, because I'm going to go and just go over what we expect from Clement this season. What targets they have to achieve? Earlier on, Scott said that, being in touch. The start of the season, not a great opening day, draw to Hearts, but it's not the end of the world. And I think most people as well would have hope for a better performance at Parkhead, but not surprised that maybe we didn't come away with a win. So not in a dramatically terrible position compared to maybe 2 points off where we could have been expected to be. But what does he need to do for the next to December or January? And then what kind of things do you think he needs to bring in, and how do you think he needs to progress towards the end of the season?
I think it is very much one game at a time. I'm looking next international break, win the 4 league games, get to a cup final, be in touch, still be competitive. If we get to the start of next year, going into the Old Firm game, still in touch, having lifted the League Cup and sitting on 10 points in the Europa League, I think that would be reasonable, on the assumption that you've won the League Cup by beating Celtic, and you're then going into an Old Firm game. But I think you very much have to just take it bit by bit between now and November, win the 4 league games, get to the cup final, whatever happens in the Europa League, maybe pick up 4 points across the 2 matches. We recovered very well after the defeat at Celtic. Domestically, we obviously got a bloody nose against Leon. We'll need to be similarly consistent between now and November, and then November to the end of the year, and winning. But I think just still being so that when January and the window that you talk about, it's actually worthwhile. You're actually in with a fighting chance, the opportunity to bring in maybe somebody that you're looking at a signing for the summer, but you might be able to get them in early, because they might be able to give you that final push. I think I'm very much blue sky thinking with regard to that. But I think getting to the transfer window in touch and competitive, having lifted the League Cup, I think that's what he needs, and to get that monkey off your back with regard to Celtic. Can I just there's the odd one Bo keeps talking about, no more loans or players on tick. I don't know what he means by players on tick, because it's all to do with FFP, PSR with regard to your books sort of situation. Players, you don't buy a player for 5 million and just write a cheque for 5 million, or you do a bank transfer for 5 million. It's common practice across football. So Rangers aren't doing anything that isn't happening across the whole world, and teams that have got far more money than we have. We just have to make sure that with the limited funds that we've got, that we are getting most of the signings right.
Yeah, well, for me, Cameron, the loan market works when, we don't want to be developing young players for other teams, but if we can get a player who's maybe out of favour at his club, but would improve our starting 11 for 6 months or a year, it's a no-brainer for me to bring a player like that in. But Scotty, I don't work in the corporate world anymore, thank goodness, so I don't have to worry about key performance indicators and things like that. But what would yours be for Clement the rest of this? Well, let's go to Christmas and then for the next 6 months after that.
Christmas, like Cammy said, League Cup, no win over them. It's a bare minimum. Needs to be. It's what comes with a job, unfortunately, no matter what stage of the. When you look at Mark Warburton's reign, the stick he was getting when he got his back into the SPFL in his first season, we should have been happy finishing second. Under him, I thought we were going in a really, really good direction, but ultimately he lost his job because he wasn't getting any wins against Celtic, and we'd just been a newly promoted team at that time. So unfortunately, you're not going to get away with the expectations of being Rangers manager. It's sitting there staring on the face, and be competitive towards the end of the season. I think that also needs to be the bare minimum. I think if you look as if you're closing the gap on Celtic and see the progress that we've seen in the first season under Steven Gerrard, you'll get time. But if you're going to keep leaving us wide open at the back with two centre-backs playing on either edge of the box when your goalkeepers get the ball, that's just asking to get beat. For me, it's just wild tactics, and that's on Clement. That's what I've seen at Parkhead, and it's not working. He's played the same way against them countless times now. We get closer in the League Cup final, and now we've been back away. That's fair in the sense of the overturn the players and stuff, but you'll give him time on that. But it needs to show an improved performance and a win in the next time we play Celtic. That's what it's all coming down to at the end of the day. He seems to be doing all right against the other teams in the league. He seems to know how to get past them. He seems to know how to win, which is fine. But we've got a problem in the room, an elephant in the room with Aberdeen just now as well. So we need to deal with them and put them back in the box ASAP.
Well, tongue-tied there, sorry. Let's talk about one of the good things.
Would you not say put them back in their pen rather than put them back in their box?
Well, aye.
Is that too controversial?
No, that's fine for me, Cammy. That's what I meant to say.
Cammy, one good point before he signed was that he develops youth players. Now, we've seen it a little bit with McCausland. We've brought in Connor Barron, obviously. He didn't play for us, but he's a young-ish player. Diamandi's a young player. Igaman's a young player. That's great, but would you like to have seen more progression from our B team? And is that maybe more of a statement on how the B team's been run that he's not been able to?
Yeah, to be honest, I think that's. I think if Ross McCausland has shown that if you grab the opportunity, he will involve you in the squad. Bailey Rice is the one for me. I think he's been very unfortunate with injuries, and we talk about number sixes and that sort of thing. He wouldn't solve the experience heads as a number six, but I think he's a player that I would like to have seen more involved, and I just hope that he gets a period where he's available and he's training consistently with the first team squad, and between now and the end of the season that he but I think Bailey Rice, to be honest, Lovelace obviously got injured very early on, and McCausland was the one that grabbed the opportunity and grasped it, and I think it's very clear that the manager likes him and the manager trusts him and he follows instruction, etc. But Bailey Rice for me is the one player. I think he's the sort of standout from the academy setup that I think has the potential to be a Rangers player in the future.
Scott, I'm looking forward to seeing Bailey Rice hopefully blended into the team this season. Zach Lovelace as well. I take it he is back playing. He's not injured anymore. I don't know for sure. Sorry, but what our problem is, it seems to be that we're not able to play these players because we're not putting teams away. And although that's maybe not all on Clement, it's just he's got the players he's got. It's maybe more on the team. He maybe would want to bring these players through if he had more flexibility. Would you agree with that?
I think if he had more quality, I think he would bring the players through.
I think it's just that.
No, I think it's. I don't know. I mean, Paul's just says in the comments, look at Robbie Fraser signing a new deal and then nothing's a waste of that boy's time. Complete waste of that boy's time. I'd be selling Ridvan in the summer and saying, right, you're number 2 left back. It's as easy as that. That's how we're going to. And going by this copy interview that was done by a Rangers review, it seems to be as if we're going to infiltrate the squad with Scottish players and look at other markets and maybe sign one Scottish player a season, I think was said, which would be fine. But in terms of youth, there's a wee bit that lies at the manager's door, Billy. I'm sorry, because you're 4-5-1 up against Ross County and you're bringing Kieran Dowell on over Bailey Rice. It's like,
yeah,
what's going on? Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got all these, you're playing players out of position, square pegs and round holes. Zach Lovelace made a really, really good impression last year. He's not even had a minute off the bench, not 1 minute. So there's no hope for these boys, so they're not going to want to stay because they want to play first team football. Lovelace was playing first team football in Millwall in the English Championship before we signed him. Can he be a bad player if he's playing at that level at 16? Do you know what I mean? And he's what, 19 now, 18, 19, something like that. And he's played about 3, 4, maybe 5 times for Rangers first team at a poorer level, which has got to be said. Apart from Europe, SPFL's below the Championship for me. So it does lie with the manager a wee bit on me as well. I think he's just like the rest of them, if I'm being honest. Bill says the same thing, Gio says the same thing, except Gio was the one that put players in a position and developed them, i.e. Calvin Bassey. Well, he wasn't a youth player. He was kinda. He was on the fringes. He was signs of cross-border, blah blah. Really hope Bailey Rice gets some minutes, but I'm not holding my breath for a young boy.
Fair enough. Well, look, thanks very much for the chats, everybody, and all the comments you've made. But I'm going to go round the horn a wee bit, and just in case I've not brought anything up you wanted to bring up him, Phillipe Clement, in the last year, Cammy. So I'll hand over to you if you've got anything else you wanted to mention.
No, not really. I just think we never really spoke about how the in great detail the bounce that he did get and that period going to Betis, winning away in Betis, topping your group, following it up on the Sunday with a cup final victory. In those early days, we were totally restricting teams' opportunities. I think there was this, Jack Butland could have been sitting with his pipe and slippers sort of thing. We were very, very organised in those gaps that have sort of developed over the course of the period after that. That frustrates me because I think there was an awful lot of positive early signs in that sort of November, December, January period. And then obviously that 5-0 against Hearts, you go to Kilmarnock on the Wednesday night, you dig out a 2-1 result, and then on the Saturday you look as though you've never met each other and you get beat with Motherwell. That's how quickly it changed in the course of 7 days. But I think I would love Clement to go on a similar run with this group of players between now and January. I think if you go on a similar run in a similar vein of form, then we will be in the hunt. And I think he has shown that if you rewind a year, how the mood within the support was, I think everybody thought the season was over. So there are some parallels with regard to where we were a year ago, but I do have a bit more hope that he has a plan with regard to what he wants to do. I just want him to be more flexible and show more adaptability to playing Tottenham in the Europa League. Don't treat Tottenham like you're playing against St Johnstone. Go to Celtic. Don't have the same approach for all opposition, because I think you have to be more adaptable. And I think if he doesn't show more adaptability, then if he's Rangers manager this time next year, I'll be very surprised.
And Scotty, anything else that you wanted to bring up that we've not talked or touched on?
No, I think I've had my fill of talking about Phillipe Clement for the time being, Billy.
You've been pretty busy with it.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I'm trying to chase up an ex-player. So if there's any ex-players that have played under Phillipe Clement watching us, give Rangers Journal a message somewhere. Because I would love to hear a player's perspective on what he's like as a manager on a training field. But But no, Billy, thanks for having me on, and thanks for your company, Cammy.
Yeah, thank you, Cammy, for coming on. Thank you, Scotty, for coming on as well. It's been kind of enjoyable going over that. There certainly was good points of last season, and there's certainly signs that we, if we stick with this manager, we could still be on a winner. I don't know if we're all 100% convinced on that, but as Rangers fans, we do back them until we don't. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for your comments. Please like and subscribe. Please tell your friends about us, and remember that every night is a Rangers Journal night. Good night.